How does Wolverine pick his nose? Ow! Hey guys, it's DT and welcome back to another one of my big unboxing videos. So today, as promised, we have another Wolverine piece. This one is the XM Studios Brown Wolverine. We took a look at the premium format Logan, the premium format Wolverine, the classic Wolverine costume with a Hulk versus Wolverine maquette, and now the brown costume. Now this is the costume that I grew up with in the 80s and the 90s. We'll get a little more into the costume history later on in the video, but you guys came here to see the statue, so let's open this up. Okay guys, so here it is. So for this one, I'm not gonna be using these Wolverine claws that I used last time. These things don't cut that great, and it really hurts to hold these things. Ow, ow. So apparently Adamantium is not the best thing to open boxes with, so we've got this little guy right here. This is actually one of the smaller XM boxes. I think it's the first XM box that I've been able to open up on the table here. Usually they're so big I have to open everything up on the floor. Got the outer box opened. Got some nice cardboard. So of course we have the assemblage book. Very nice, full color, shows everything you get, as well as detailed instructions. Part of the fun in these statues is kind of figuring out where everything goes. Looks like we also get an art print. I love how these art prints are actually drawings and not just the photo of the statue. To have like an artist rendering of the statue is kind of cool. We have the black box. All right, and inside that we have the styrofoam with the straps, very similar to the Optimus Prime box. So here on the side of the box, we have Wolverine brown costume. Go ahead and remove those straps. Time to see what's on the first level. Okay, let's unwrap this stuff. Okay, so here's a closer look at the top level. This piece includes a bunch of different arm switch outs, as you can see. There are 3 pairs of arms. Let's take a look at these 2 right here. So this piece is a bit unique in that you can attach different claws to each of the arms. They have a bone claw option as well as a metal claw option. Really nice detail there with the gloves. So these arms are a little bit bent, not completely stretched out. Then we have these arms that are sticking together right now with a very strong magnet. These are the bent arms, almost bent at a 90-degree angle. Here are the stretched out arms. He's got a big sword, and the hilts are actually permanently attached to his hands. You can also display this with the claws as well as the swords. So those blades are right here, and I believe they are made out of metal. So very cool option to have. If you don't want claws, you can display these swords. We also get a statue of a statue. In this case, a big fish. Really detailed piece. Looks sort of like a pineapple from this angle. Little gold highlights. Give it that patina look. We also have this little helmet, little samurai helmet. So we have these little pieces right here. They have a little give to them, so if you were to bump this on something, they wouldn't break off. This doesn't actually go on Wolverine's head. It's just sort of a decoration piece that goes onto the base. So you can include it or not, depending on your taste. Here we have the unmasked portrait. Not a bad portrait. I think his hair might be a little high, a little big. Nice hair detail. He's got like light brown highlights in his hair, his eyebrows too. He's got blue eyes like Logan should have, and the whites of his eyes are a little bloodshot. Nice unmasked portrait. However, I do think I'm going to be using the masked portrait, and that is a nice one. It looks like his tongue is wet. A lot of texture on the top of his head, as well as on these little fins here. We get 2 katana hilts and attach them to the swords like this. Now they can be displayed on their own on the base. And here we have a bunch of claws. It looks like all of these are the bone claws. This is what they look like. So they're a bit bumpy. You can kind of see a reddish tone through the middle to give it that sense of bone marrow inside, and all these little pores. So nice touch. You have enough bone claws to use on all of the arms. They give you a ton of them. So if you lose one, you've got a bunch more to replace it with. And there's this little piece right here. I'm not exactly sure where this goes. Looks like a piece of the roof or something. And now let's look at the second level. And with the magic of video editing, here it is unwrapped. So we have the base over here, Wolverine's body here, so let's take a look at it. So here's a glimpse at the brown costume. And I think it's nice that they have the seam right here where the brown ends on his deltoid muscle. Very nice boots. Got some nice texturing going on here in both the boots, the pants, and the brown leather. And here is the base. Now the base on this piece is the rooftop of a Japanese building. Very intricate design. It reminds me a lot of the XM Studios Samurai Batman statue. It has that same feel where it's the very tip of a roof with the character standing right at the pinnacle. A lot of little details in there. It looks like they made 650 of these statues, and this is number 52. And then over here we've got a couple little bags. So these are the metal claws, and I believe these are made out of plastic. They are very lightweight, but they have a chrome finish on them. We'll see how they fit onto those hands in just a bit. So here's everything you get in the box, and now it is time to put this guy together. So we have our turntable. We've got the big one because the base on this one is pretty sizable. And whoa, here we have the base. Looks really good. And I believe Wolverine goes on first. So his right foot just has a little peg and key, and it goes right up here in the front. His back foot rests on a little indentation on the back. Next up, we're gonna put this little fish guy, and he goes backwards like this, I believe, and he just fits in like this. So Wolverine's foot doesn't actually touch the fish statue, but it looks like he's sort of pushing off of it. Next, let's give Wolverine some arms. We'll use these ones that are at a right angle. Here is the left arm, and here is the right. And for this one, let's give him, we'll put his unmasked portrait on. Boom. What do you guys think of that? So of course he needs some claws. I think we're gonna try out the bone claws for this one. I know some had reservations about the bone claws because they're not really comic accurate. By the time Wolverine was wearing this suit, he already had metal claws. We're gonna put them in here anyway. So each of the claws has a little part that you can insert into the opening on his gloves. Some do go in a little bit easier than others. And if it doesn't want to go, you can just try another claw. Okay, so here's a look with the unmasked portrait and the bone claws. Not a bad look. His head does look a little big because his hair is so big. So now let's put this helmet on. It just rests on the bottom. I don't think there's actually a place where it attaches. It looks like there might be a magnet underneath. Kind of just put it right here. And there's like a light magnetic force that kind of holds it in place. Okay, so now we're gonna try the partially bent arms. And for these, we're gonna use the metal claws. We insert these the same way we did for the bone claws. The chrome finish looks really nice. You might have to wipe down some fingerprints if you're not using gloves. Everything's spaced out really nice. Nothing looks too wonky. And now we'll switch out his arms. And with the way these arms are positioned, you really cannot see a seam. Okay, so here's a look. It's time for the masked portrait. Boom. And here he is with the partially outstretched arms and the masked portrait. I think I'm liking this pose the best so far. And finally, we have the outstretched arms holding the swords. So we are going to put the blades on. There's a small little peg on each sword. Fit in like this. And let's go ahead and remove these arms. And put the ones with the blades. There you go, flying Wolverine. It's like Ninja Wolverine here. So when I first saw this piece, I was considering displaying him just like this because it was unique that he was holding swords instead of his claws. However, having this pose is going to take up a lot of room. This adds a lot to the width of the piece, and I'm really digging these metal claws. So with the masked portrait, you do have a seam line where the head meets the neck. And when you have the unmasked portrait on there, his hair kind of hides that seam line. If you wanted to get really creative, you could mix and match the arms as well and give him one arm with a sword and another arm with bone claws. like that. It kind of throws off the balance of the piece a little bit. You can also do one arm metal claws, one arm bone claws. Definitely doesn't make much sense. It just goes to show that there are tons of display options with this piece. So for me, it's all about the metal claws, the partially outstretched arms, and because we're not going to be using these blades, we can actually display them in the base. You guys like what I did over here with the little Wolverine coming out of the ground? You almost have enough to make your own little display with this guy. We're gonna attach the extra hilts, and there are little slit cutouts in the base that these insert into. As you can see, here's one sword sticking out of the base. And the problem is when you stick it in there, you gotta kind of force it in there so the friction will hold it in place. And in doing so, you're gonna probably scrape up the bottom of the swords. Okay, and for this piece, it looks like there is a little keyhole on the rooftop. So a little bit of history on Wolverine's costumes. So of course, he started with the classic blue and yellow costume back in Hulk 181. Went on for most of the beginning of his X-Men run, all the way up until Dave Cockrum left as the artist of the X-Men. And right before he left, he actually had another suit before this brown suit, a suit that he stole from Fang. And that costume was also brown and yellow. It had teeth on his belt, around his gloves, and around his collar area. And I read somewhere that Dave Cockrum did this just to make it harder for the next artist that came in to draw. And that artist happened to be John Byrne. He wasn't particularly fond of that costume. I don't think the fans were either. So he just changed it back to the good old yellow and blue. And it pretty much stayed that way all the way up until this book, X-Men 139, which was the actual first appearance of this brown costume. It was also the issue where Kitty Pryde joined the X-Men. On the front here, you can see that he has the blue and yellow costume, but as soon as you open up the book, he's wearing this brown costume. So they really didn't explain why. I think it was just time for a new look. And that was the costume that was also used when Wolverine got his own limited series. And this was actually the series that we got to see Wolverine in Japan and see some of the action that happened over there. Okay, so starting off with the base, we have the Japanese rooftop. The sculpt is very detailed. We've got scratches, broken roof tiles, got a giant fish statue. We have some broken wood coming out of the back. The paint and the sculpt on that could have been a little bit better, but that's a really small detail. It's in the back of the statue, so you're probably never gonna see it. I like the little gold details that they have in the base. I love that they have this helmet. It's super detailed. I really like the paint job on it, and it just adds to that whole Japanese environment. The same with these two katanas. Doesn't make too much sense that they're both stuck in the rooftop, but I think it does add to the overall piece. The same thing with this fish here. There's really no purpose for it other than to give the rear of the piece a little more height. I think without it, the piece from the side looks a little bit unbalanced. It's very forward heavy. And with regards to Wolverine, there's really not much to complain about. The leather texture and paint on his boots look great. It carries over to the rest of his costume, on his back as well as on his gloves. He's got a line texture on the yellow portions of his costume, and his cowl appears to be made out of leather as well. He's got this big red belt with a metal buckle and a metal tip at the end. I know the tip at the end was not comic accurate. However, I do think it ties in well with the Japanese theme. The gloves look really nice. They're split down the middle with like the elastic showing, as well as two big straps. Some people didn't like that the back of his gloves had this black on it. However, that's one of the things I like about XM Studios. They start off with a very comic accurate design, and then they add their own touches to make it a little bit more modern. The one gripe I did have was the seam on the head. I think they could have done that a little bit better. This mass portrait is a little bit wobbly, where the seam is a bit more noticeable on one side of his head. It also appears that the texture doesn't really carry over from his neck onto the back part of his head. The teeth do look a little funny on the top. It looks like he was chewing on something really hard and somehow bent his teeth. Okay guys, so I brought the boys out for a little comparison. Here we have the premium format Logan, premium format Wolverine. Now right off the bat, you can tell that the Brown Wolverine here is a lot bigger than both of these guys. And not only because he's standing on a higher base, just overall proportions are a lot bigger. So here is the side-by-side of both the heads. And as you can see, the XM Wolverine head is a lot larger. Is that a good thing or a bad thing? I don't know. But both the masked and unmasked portraits are a lot bigger. So which one is my favorite? Well, I do love the texture and the paint on the Sideshow premium format here. The overall proportions I think are a lot better. The hair texture and paint are a lot better than the XM Wolverines. However, this guy looks pretty ferocious. I love the whole Japanese theme. I'm digging the brown costume. The texture and paint on the brown costume is great. Same with the cowl. I love the gloves and the chrome claws. I know a lot of people had a hang up that they weren't metal, but seriously, these chrome claws I think look a lot better than the metal ones. It's a toss-up. I'm not even gonna pick a favorite. These are actually my favorite of each of these costumes, so I'm glad to have all three in my collection. I do have one more Wolverine, a Weapon X. If you guys wanna see it, make sure to leave a comment down below and I will do an unboxing on that one as well. Who would win in a fight between the three of these? Probably this big guy right here. He's bigger, he's buffer, his claws are shinier, and he's got swords. Okay guys, so that was a look at the brand new XM Studios Brown Wolverine. Awesome statue. I think it's a must-have for any Wolverine statue collector. And if you are interested in getting this, remember there are only 650 of them out there. If you're in the US, it'll set you back about $1,000. The statue itself is close to $800, and the shipping will run you about $200. So it's not a cheap piece. However, if you're looking for a brown Wolverine, this is the one to get. So I hope you guys enjoyed the video. Stay tuned. Evan will be up next with one of his videos, and we will see you guys next time. Bye.